Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, March 27th, and today is the 173rd day since the attacks by Hamas and other groups on the southern part of Israel on October 7th. In the last 24 hours, last night, Churches for Middle East Peace and a number of other groups around the world published a letter that will be addressed to world leaders, and more than 140 bishops, one cardinal, but more than 140 global Christian leaders signed this letter. It's not only calling for a permanent and lasting ceasefire in Gaza, it's also calling for a halt of arms sales to Israel right now. The letter's signers included a U.S. Catholic bishop, a Catholic cardinal, the presiding bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the presiding bishop and primate of the Episcopal Church, an Anglican dean, a few bishops from the Church of England. This is quite significant because these are Western church leaders, in addition to a number of church leaders from South Africa. But in terms of different continents that were represented, there was someone from that's serving in Hong Kong, some from Asia, some from South America, many other notable figures from wide ranges of churches: Catholic, Lutheran, Mennonite, Quaker, evangelical, peace churches, and the like. The Christian leaders wrote in this letter, which we had the privilege, of organizing. The letter says that the global church and world cannot be silent as people continue to die in Gaza by military assault, the lack of adequate medical care, hunger, and disease, and warn that world leaders have responded with empty rhetoric and political volleying about addressing the humanitarian crisis in Gaza while ignoring the direct causes of the catastrophe. We noted that the United States, the UK, Israel, and other countries must uphold their responsibility as signatories to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. We all called for a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire, the release of all hostages, and we called on the United States and other world powers to halt additional military support and arms to Israel and to not be complicit in the ongoing military campaign that is having such a devastating impact on the civilian population of Gaza. I wanted to let you know we're continuing to collect additional signatories who are bishops and executive level leaders. So if you know of those, they could, if they want to have their names added, they could contact us at info@cmep.org. But I also wanted to let you know we're going to open up that letter to additional signatories, to anyone who would like to sign on. That'll start to be open on Saturday. We're going to announce it at our Holy Saturday service as a part of Holy Week with Gaza. That service is at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which you can find all the information about that on our social media with a number of other groups that are sponsoring that. And so we'd invite you to consider adding your name, join us, not only in calling for a ceasefire, but in saying just enough is enough. This is in the best interest of the people of Gaza, but it's also in the best interest of Israel. We're sending that to the White House today, and leaders who've signed will be sending it to their respective heads of state around the world. And so I got a note from one of the signatories who said, thank you for this update. That was actually Religious News Services highlighted this. And so you can go there and read an article about it. And the signatory said, thank you for the update and your work on this. It will bear witness for generations to come. And so we just would invite you to join us in that. Meanwhile, in Gaza, since October 7th, between then and today, March 27th, at least 32,490 Palestinians have been killed and 74,889 Palestinians have been injured. And so that's the death toll and injury toll as of today. In northern Israel, the hostilities between Hezbollah and the Israelis have continued. A 38-year-old Israeli Druze man was killed. There was a heavy barrage of at least 30 rockets that were fired at northern Israel from Lebanon. Hezbollah has said that the barrage was a response to an Israeli airstrike that happened overnight in the village in South Lebanon of El-Bireh, where Lebanon said that 7 people were killed. In the United States, the US and UK jointly sanctioned 3 entities and 2 individuals who have been found to be key financial facilitators involved in fundraising for Hamas. And it was found that 55% of Americans disapprove of Israeli military action in Gaza. According to Gallup, this is the first time that a survey has found that the majority of Americans disapprove of Israel's military action in Gaza. This number has risen 10% since November of 2023. The third U.S. official has officially resigned. Her name is Anel Shalin. She resigned in protest against the Biden administration's policies on the Gaza war. She's a State Department official working on human rights in the Middle East. And so she resigned publicly, citing reasons for her departure being the inability to do her job effectively because of a protest against his administration's policies towards the Gaza war. Senator Bernie Sanders decried how too few Democratic members of Congress are publicly calling for conditions on aid to Israel, positing that it is due to considerations such as pro-Israel organizations like AIPAC and U.S. President Biden's decades-long support for Israel. An update on the hostages and ceasefire conversations. Netanyahu said that he canceled that Israeli delegation that was supposed to come to Washington to discuss alternatives that would allow for the safeguarding of civilians in Rafah because he wanted, quote, to send a message to Hamas, end quote. He also told Republican Senator Rick Scott that the U.S. decision in the UN Security Council, he's referring to the abstention on the vote that allowed the Security Council resolution regarding a ceasefire to pass. So Netanyahu said that the U.S.'s decision to abstain was, quote, a very, very bad move. The worst part about it was that it encouraged Hamas to take a hard line, end quote. Prime Minister Netanyahu's office told the White House it wants to reschedule that meeting that it canceled in D.C. on a planned military operation in Rafah, according to NBC. The families of soldiers held hostage by Hamas are expected to meet with Netanyahu on Thursday, tomorrow. In Gaza, the Israeli Defense Forces have started to use facial recognition technology, according to the New York Times, and citing 3 senior Israeli intelligence officers. According to the report, hundreds of Palestinians have been arrested due to the use of this artificial intelligence system that is partially operated by a unit 8200. Defense Minister Gallant, who apparently is still in Washington, or has been at least for a series of meetings with top officials, said that neither Israel nor Hamas will rule Gaza after the war ends, and a local alternative must be built. I just will note that that's a bit of a contradiction from what we've heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu in the past. Hamas published a recording that it claimed was the head of its military wing, Mohammed Deif, calling on the Arab and Muslim world to start marching to Palestine. Ireland said it would intervene in South Africa's genocide case against Israel. Their foreign minister said that while it was for the World Court to decide whether or not genocide was being committed, he wanted to be clear that the Hamas attacks on October 7th and what is happening in Gaza now, quote, represents the blatant violation of international humanitarian law on a mass scale, end quote. 3 Palestinians were killed by the Israeli Defense Forces in the city of Jenin in the last 24 hours, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Ramallah. And in Jordan, the anti-riot police beat and arrested dozens of demonstrators trying to march heavily towards the heavily guarded Israeli embassy in Amman. We've been talking about those protests, so it sounds like those have escalated. And then related to Syria, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights affiliated with Syrian opposition said the death toll from Monday night strikes in Syria by Israel against the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, that death toll has risen to 17. The last thing I want to let you know about is the Washington Post had a report related to Marwan Barghouti, who's being held in Israeli prison. He's been held for more than 20 years. He was convicted of murder in 2004. He was a leader in the Second Intifada. He's now 64 years old. He received 5 life sentences. Israeli officials have deemed that he is a terrorist because they believe he ordered suicide bombings against civilians during the Second Intifada. He has said he had no connections to suicide attacks. He's being held in the Megiddo prison, which is a maximum security facility. The Washington Post reported that the United States and other governments have concerns about the way he is being treated and have expressed allegations from his family and others that he is being physically and psychologically mistreated. I'd encourage you to read that article to learn more about his story, to learn more about those accusations that are coming out about what's happening right now. It's been reported that he was put in solitary confinement after October 7th. Marwan is on one of the top lists for the prisoners that Hamas would like to have released in prisoner exchanges. And I also would point you to, there is a Apple Plus documentary that came out, I think in 2023, that's called Tomorrow's Freedom, that tells Marwan's story. And in the documentary, it talks about him being an advocate of peace while also supporting the right of Palestinian resistance. According to the Washington Post, securing Barghouti's release is a popular cause among Palestinians, many who see him as a possible successor to Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas, that's President Abbas. Baghoudi has been near the top of Hamas's list for prisoner exchange, according to those who are close to the negotiations. So please continue to call for a ceasefire, continue to pray for peace. May God go before us during this Holy Week for those of us who are observing, for Muslims who are in the middle of Ramadan. For all who are religious, may we pray for peace as we work together towards an end to all violence, a release of hostages, and a long-lasting solution to violence in the Middle East.